Okay, it's 1:30 by my clock. Call the meeting to order.
Well, I don't think you're the chair because we have to do an election.
I carry on till we get to item 6, new business 6.1.
Councillor Watkins, I guess what I should do, normally the way we do it, and we did it this morning, is I'll chair it.
Okay.
Then the first order of business will be to appoint a chair.
Okay.
The chair will take over and
Perfect.
I didn't say appoint, but select a chair. And then
Okay.
the chair will take over and the committee will select the vice chair. So I guess with that, I will call the meeting to order at 1:30 p.m. here. Councillors Watkin, Hanson, Councillor Broadhead. Am I missing anybody?
Councillor Mackay is here.
Is he? He's not showing up on. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Mackay. All right. So the first order of business will be to select a chair. So I would ask now for nominations from committee members for a chair. Councillor Broadhead.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Jackie Hansen as chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hansen, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay. I'll make a second call for nominations for committee chair.
You want me to nominate one of you guys?
No.
Third and final call for nominations for committee chair.
Oh, come on.
You're the best. You're the best, Jackie.
All right. So with that, Councillor Hansen, you're the chair, and I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Mr. Scoble. Happy to do it this year.
Tyrannical and oppressive behavior. Tyrannical and oppressive.
Well, before we move down to adoption of back up to the adoption of the agenda, we will carry on with elections of vice chair. So I'm looking for a nomination between you two gentlemen of who would like to be the vice chair. Oh, look at that hand go up so fast. Councillor Broadhead.
With his agreement, I'd like to nominate Councillor Ray Watkins as the vice chair.
Do you accept, Councillor Watkins?
I accept the nomination.
Okay, calling a second time for nominations on vice chair. And calling a third time for nominations of vice chair. You, Councillor Watkins, are acclaimed vice chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move back up on the agenda to, first of all, the adoption of the agenda, which we really kind of never got to. Any objections to the adoption of the agenda? Okay, we will move the adoption of the agenda. Don't think we have any appointments unless there's somebody that would like to speak. Anybody from Ledge Services? Let me know that.
No, there's no one.
Okay, thanks, Renee. We will move on to the approval of the minutes of October 13th, 2020. Are there any errors or omissions? Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes as presented? So moved by Councillor Watkins. All those in favor? That is carried. I just got to move down here. Okay. And so we're going to move straight over to 6.2, which is the amendments to policy C-CAO-01 city manager delegations, and presented today by Ms. Diane McMorty. Take it away. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hansen. Good afternoon, committee members. Today's agenda report is requesting committee's consideration to increase the level of delegation to the Chief Administrative Officer surrounding sole and single source procurement awards. One of the recommendations from the MNP report on procurement was to raise the threshold limits related to competitive procurement. Doing this creates efficiencies and capacity within the city with limited increase in risk. To make this change most impactful, contract signing authorities also need to be raised accordingly. There is currently a section within the CAO delegations policy that requires sole and single source contract awards greater than 100,000 to be approved by council. Council in their governance role exercises their power over administration through the setting of budgets. Nobody from the CAO downwards has the authority to spend beyond a council approved budget, except in an emergency situation. The actual method of procurement for example, a competitive bid versus a sole source, is realistically an administrative function. And as such, there are guidelines and internal approval processes within the purchasing administrative directive that ensure proper due diligence around sole source procurements. So the recommended change within the policy supports placing the decision-making within the appropriate body. The only other thing I just wanted to mention is in the actual policy that's attached to this agenda report in section 5C3, there is reference in the first line that's referencing 5C6, and it should actually be 5C5. So I just noticed that. So if should this pass through committee, when we come to council, we'll make that amendment. And that's all I have. So I'll take any questions you may have.
Councillor Broadhead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. McMorty, when I read through this, I don't doubt that the approval limit is low, but if I'm not mistaken, is there not, at least in other municipalities, a threshold that needs to be established? I mean, as I read it here now, there is no threshold at all. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, sorry, from the research that we've done, we only actually found very few actual council procurement policies have really restrict the CAO from procurement. Like I said, it's pretty much controlled through budget rather than the actual procurement methods. I did find one, I believe it's Fort Saskatchewan, that did require a sole source to go to council at a $500,000 level. But all the other policies actually are completely silent on that matter, so it's completely within the CAO authority to make that determination of the method of procurement. Like I said, that being said, it's not like there's no limits, because we are limited obviously within the council approved budget for a particular project or spending limit.
Well, thank you for that information. I guess my experience is old. Thank you for that.
Question.
Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, I just had a question there. It says, or has appropriate justification for a single sole source acquisition. What's the appropriate justification for a single sole source?
There's several things in the policy. So some of it could be an extreme requirement for urgency, so kind of more an emergency situation. One of the other criteria is that it has to be compatible with existing equipment and technologies. Goodness, I don't even have the min directive open on my screen. There's about 5 or 6 different things that thresholds that it has to meet before we would approve a sole source.
Okay, right. So basically, you're saying that if it's a competitive bid, you're going to give it to the lowest person, and if it's a sole source, it has to meet the sole source requirements, and all these things are approved by budget and project charters anyway, so there's no need to have a limit?
That's correct. It's just that I think we don't require council approval to go ahead and do it. We do still have, and I guess what I want to clarify, it's not to say that we don't have limits for sole source. So within our policy, we have actually quite a low limit where we can, where a director could sole source. So I think it's either under 10,000 or under 20,000. We're looking at some changes to those limits, but anything above that has to go through quite a rigorous administrative process to make sure that, you know, the justification on that award is solid, so that we're not risking a trade agreement challenge.
Okay, thank you very much. That's my question, Madam Chair.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question to administration. So I know this deals with the one purchasing policy around greater than 100,000. So we had a situation recently where we had a scope change in our project, and we had to come back, or the administration had to come back to council because they needed an increase, and it was above the 10,000. Is this something, are we going to be impacting that policy as well, or is this just for greater than $100,000 ones?
So we're not at this point. So this $100,000 limit is just specifically related to the method of procurement, which is sole source. The question around scope changes and those kind of pieces, we will likely be coming back to council at some point with further changes to those areas, but we're not quite ready for that yet. We just wanted to make this one change to allow us to create some efficiencies that we could then capitalize on to get further through the recommendations of the MMP audit. We're trying to create some capacity. And so some of these smaller, or I'm not going to say small changes, they're pretty significant changes. Like I said, will give us that capacity, but we do intend to go back and look at that section of the policy to see what makes sense and when it should be coming back to council in terms of scope changes.
Yeah, I think that's nice to hear, because I think I would support something like that. I mean, I don't know what that would cap out at, but I think, I mean, the amount of money we were talking about in that particular circumstance was kind of small. So it just seemed to be a little bit of overkill in relation to that. And I understand, you know, some of the concerns in relation to sole sourcing, but when we have a minor scope change, I think we just have some burden there. Anyways, I thank you for your response. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? So the last time that this policy was revised was in August of 2020. I don't remember what the revisions were at that time, but in terms of this this part of the policy, is it safe to say that this really hasn't been looked at since 2001?
Yeah, I don't believe there's been a lot. There's been a couple of minor changes to the procurement section of the policy over the last couple of years, but they were relatively minor. We had to clear up, there was some inconsistencies and some ambiguity on a few sections. I know we cleaned up a couple of years ago, but it was a pretty minor change. This is the first sort of major change, certainly since I've been here.
Okay.
And as I mentioned before, I would anticipate us bringing forward some more changes as well as we work through the recommendations through the audit. There's some other areas that have some advantages to us making some changes, but we want to make sure that we've researched and we get it right the first time.
Well, I guess, you know, at the end of the day, if this is going to improve efficiencies and not bog down council as much, give the CAO a little bit more latitude in whatever procurements have to happen, as long as there are checks and balances in place and what needs to be coming to council through budget, through capital projects, through all of that. I think we just want to be assured that a change in this policy provides better efficiencies, maybe saving some money, but keeps our checks and balances in place. And from what I can read, it does. But I guess the only thing that I was thinking about is, should there be a cap? Should we be saying up to $1 million? Should we be saying anything like that? But, you know, I haven't seen other policies to know. So it's just a comment.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing that the only thing I was going to share with that was interesting is what we put in our sort of rationale for making this change as well, is regardless of whether it's 100,000 or 500,000 and you're making a decision on a sole source, is what information would council need to get to know whether they should be approving it or not approving it. And I think that was kind of what made us lead to believe that really it's the procurement professionals within administration, you know, that have those details and the knowledge on the trade agreements and what has to happen to protect the city. And it's almost unfair to put that that decision in front of council.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, and then also to the administrative purchasing directive, just to give you a sense, is about 38 pages long. So we do have lots of checks and balances in place in terms of procurement.
Yeah, and I just think, you know, that just needs to be said out loud, which you have. So that's what everybody wants to know, is that there's accountability, transparency, checks and balances, and after this policy revision, more efficiencies. So I have no more questions. Does anybody else have any questions around this? Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, and just on the procurement process, like we've gone through all the audits and all the things, and there was never a concern about the procurement process to date, has there been?
No, most of the recommendations that came out of the audit were more about sort of helping us kind of grow up from a little organization to a bigger organization. You know, so we need to kind of expand what we're doing to make sure that we're procuring in the most efficient way with limited increase in risk. So that's what we're working towards.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Seeing no more questions, Councillor Broadhead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to come late. Just you spoke a little bit earlier about change orders and the threshold there, and Councillor McKay, I believe, brought it up that we had dealt with one earlier. So the new section 5 still has 10% of the value of the original budget, or 50,000. is this threshold appropriate given that we're taking out the other thresholds in here?
As I had mentioned before, we will very likely be coming back with further amendments to this policy once we've done a little bit more research and sort of understand the implications of either changing or removing some of those thresholds around, change orders, scope changes, some of those pieces as well. We were just wanting to address the sole source portion right now, and then we'll be coming forward with further recommendations on some of those other areas.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mayor Herron, did you have anything? No. Okay, I am looking for one of my committee members to move the recommended motion. Gentlemen, Councillor Broadhead.
Just let me bring it up here. Okay, here we are. That the Community Growth and Infrastructure Standing Committee recommends to Council that the proposed amendments to policy C-CAO-01 City Manager Delegations, provided as an attachment to the November 9th, 2020 agenda report entitled Amendments to Policy C-CAO-01 City Manager Delegations, be approved.
Thank you. Anything to open?
Well, in essence, it's a fairly straightforward change proposed by administration. It's to streamline how we do business in the city of St. Albert and bring it into sort of congruence with what's happening in the rest of the municipal world, so to speak, and to remove a barrier to the efficient functioning of our administration. So to that end, I certainly support the administration's recommendations.
Thank you. Anything, Councillor Watkins, on debate? No, I think it's great that it's coming forward. I think we have lots of checks and balances in place at the city. And should we question any sole sourcing, we can question it, and we can bring it up and have a discussion if necessary. So leaving it in the hands of our experts, I think is a good idea. And as Councillor Broadhead said, creating efficiencies within the CAO's delegation. So that's good. That's it for me. Anything to close, Councillor Broadhead?
Nothing further for me, Madam Chair.
Okay, calling the question. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Heading back up to the agenda, which I think is pretty lean. It's adjournment. So sorry, Wes, that you went all the way downtown, but enjoy the weather on your way home.
Thank you very much. I see you here anyway, so thanks for that.
Okay.
By the way.
Sorry, Wes. Like I said, I didn't think you were going to be there this afternoon. I didn't see you there this morning.
It's all good, man.
Jackie, I think you probably just broke Ray's record in fastest committee meeting.
That's going to be the aim. That's going to be my total goal.
I think I had one about that fast.
Yeah, maybe.